Burke from Silicon Republic, reporting from Accenture's International Women's Day event at the RDS. HilaryO'Meara, Technology Lead for Accenture Ireland. How do you think the event went today?
Oh, I think it went really, really well. I have to say, I mean, it's our 9th year doing it, and you just wonder, can you ever be as inspired as last year? And then you come along again this year, and it's just so inspiring. To hear Eileen O'Neill speak at the young age that she is, and just hear her story was just so inspiring, particularly me, somebody who has 2 daughters. It was just so inspiring to see somebody being so successful so young. It was just a fantastic event.
So the panel earlier on today with the tech experts, we'll call them, they weren't talking as women in technology, they were talking about technology. Was that a conscious decision on your part?
Do you know, I actually don't think it was, and actually it didn't strike me until you just said it there, but they were very much talking with the passion of what they do for the role, and they didn't actually think that being female hindered them in any way in doing that role. And we tried to tie it up a little bit at the end with kind of bringing it back to International Women's Day, but actually that was really impressive that they just saw themselves as role models, whether that be male or female. And as you say, that's the second person that somebody has commented in that, so it's really good to hear that feedback.
And so do you think that that's important to kind of shift the perspective and not segregate women in technology, but just have technology that has women?
I'm not somebody who wants to be continually going on about women and pushing women, but at the same time we have to accept that they are in the minority, particularly in technology, and we have to take action to actually help them to come through. So the Accent Women program that we have in Accenture, you know, is that's what's that there for. That's what's that there for. And I think it's very hard to be successful unless you have role models. That theme came out again today, and so without role models, you know, it's hard for the next generation to come through. So you do actually have to recognise that they are in the minority, and you have to be taking action to make that change.
So tell us a bit about the Accent on Women programme and what you intend to do.
Yes, we've got a great Accent Women programme. It's led by Paula Neary from Accenture. I actually founded it about 9 years ago when Mark Ryan, our managing director, came and said, look, we don't have enough senior women in the organisation. How do we go about fixing it? So we very simply went out and we interviewed some of our female employees, got their sense, got their feedback, and put a programme in place. And that programme has just been built and it's matured over the years to where now, you know, over 30% of Mark's leadership team are female. So we've had quite a lot of success with the programme. I think the key features of the programme are mentoring, making sure we have role models, making sure we have are connected to our women, making sure they believe that they can do it. Sometimes they need a little bit of push. People helped me in my career, and I think Katrina Hallahan mentioned that today, that people helped her in her career, people helped me in my career, and so I'm very passionate about helping other people, and that's really at the heart and the centre of what we do with Accent on Women.
So you're talking about creating role models or even finding role models, and that's something that we intend to do with Women Event tomorrow, to find these women and get them out there. Is that why you want to be involved in this campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, really important. So we very much are very conscious of being role models in Accenture, and I think to broaden that out is what you're doing with Silicon Republic is fantastic. In Accenture we actually do profile very senior women across our global organisation, and I would always take the time out to read those, and when you listen to the little tidbits of advice they have, they do help you. So I think what you're doing is wonderful and definitely very keen to support it.
What would you say to someone who might think that science or technology or engineering or maths is a man's game?
Well, I was one of those, certainly, and I was deterred personally from going for it for that very reason. I suppose, no, it's not, certainly not a man's game, and for sure I've seen how women and men can tackle the exact same issue, and they both have a very valid angle at looking at something, and it really enriches whatever it is they're trying to work at or solve. And I think going forward we need the opinions of both women and men, female and scientists, women and men in science, to actually analyse these problems and come up with the best solution going forward for the very demanding world that we're about to step into tomorrow.
And another thing that seems to deter people from science, maybe generally, or maybe women specifically, is its perception as a cold, kind of sterile environment. And in fact, it's very creative and it can be very warm, and it can solve world problems. So from your experience, you're obviously very excited and passionate about what you do. What do you think needs to be said that will drive people to go for science, not because it's clinical or because they're really good at maths or something like that, but because it's something more than that?
But science is all about logic, I think, and curiosity. And if you marry those two things, it's very much like a mystery, and you're trying to solve it. You're trying to better the world using science. And having said what you said about perhaps we're going to make the developed world richer and the developing world, the gap is going to perhaps broaden. Well, no, in fact, a lot of science can be used to help an awful lot of people in the developing world. For example, nanomaterials have been used to purify water as just a basic example. There's plenty more in terms of medicinal or pharmaceutical applications. But I suppose, no, it's not clinical. It can be clinical if you want it to be, but science for me is all about a new day. Everything is different, absolutely everything. I go into the lab and that can be a clinical setup, but I love to take the science out of the lab, bring it into the classroom, bring it into the home, sit on the bus, sit on the plane, look around and explore the science that's going on in the world around me and say to myself, perhaps I wonder, could what I'm working on advance that or improve that? And you can make it as clinical or as not clinical as you like, and I personally love to take that science out of the lab and apply it to the world around us.
So you've kind of approached science from, as you said, you're just you, so you're Rosa Streeler, you're a scientist, and you've approached science in that way, in that it's you doing science in your way.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone should just be them, and everyone is great. They are the best at being them. So why should we ever change being the person we are? Whether, I'm quite athletic as well, and I'm a member of the Reserve Defence Forces, and I have a lot of other things that I do in my life, and I think being rounded and showing all those things will enrich each of those hobbies or careers that I have much more by having all those various different aspects to me. Like I said, science can be straight and narrow sometimes, and people perceive it as very clinical, and that is a great word to describe it, but it's very much about being yourself, putting your own stamp on it, and it's your stamp that will make that difference in science.
So we're talking to Anna and Daisy from Sutton Park School, winners of the BT Young Scientist Award this year. And how did that feel?
It was really good, yeah.
When you were at the BT Young Scientist event, did you see a lot of girls there with good projects?
There were so many groups with really good projects, yeah.
Would many of those groups have girls in them, like your group?
Actually, yeah, I'd say at least half of them were all groups with girls in them, yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about your project?
Yeah, so it's a non-electric fridge for Africa, and it's powered by the sun. So basically there's water and wet river sand in between two pots with these hydroponic beads. They're little gelatin beads which contain 150 times their own weight in water. So when the water evaporates, it hits the metal surface, and then it condensates back down, reusing any water. And it was tested in Africa over here, and we got 18 to 21 days longer for food to last in our fridge than it would do on the ground.
You must be very interested in science in school. Yeah. And what drives you to pursue science as a subject?
I don't really know. No, I think it's kind of
fun. We started it in first year just because it was interesting, and then after we did a few different things with it, it just got more fun, more interesting to do more stuff with it.
Yeah.
To work on the project.
And it's just it's so good that we can make something that will help in the future, that will help them to live a better life.
And you say you started doing science when you were in first year and your curiosity took off then. Would you have liked to have done some more science then back when you were in primary school?
Yeah, I think sometimes in primary schools you're kind of held back a bit in science.
It's not the most important subject. They concentrate on the other subjects a lot more.
You're here today as part of an International Women's Day event, and we're here today to promote our Women Invent Tomorrow campaign, just for women like yourselves who are probably going to invent tomorrow. So what do you think about women in science and technology? Do you think girls your age should go for this? Is it an exciting thing to go for?
Yeah, I think if they're interested enough and they're dedicated to their work, then I definitely think more girls should be allowed, given the opportunity to even work on a project like this.
Yeah, once you start, it's really hard to stop. It just keeps going. So maybe if you're not interested in the start, it will get more interesting.
Brendan Cannon from Intel, and you're the EMEA coordinator for Intel's Girls and Women's Initiative. Would you like to tell us something about that?
Yes, so basically it's an initiative we started a couple of years ago. The figurehead program, if you like, of the initiative is a movie sponsorship for a movie that's actually being launched today, worldwide, March the 8th. It's called Girl Rising. And that highlights the issues regarding access to education for young girls and women worldwide. So in my role, if you think about it, EMEA as a very broad and diverse region, what you really face is a range of issues across the region. So in Africa, it's getting access to education for young girls. In places in the Middle East, where for cultural reasons men and women can't be in the same classroom together, it's using technology to get the women access to the information they need. And then in Europe, Ireland and places like that, it's more of how do we get young girls to access science and maths careers.
So you mentioned what you're working on in Ireland. Where are you seeing the drop-off of women not entering STEM areas?
Yeah, so talking about the drop-off of women not entering science, there's a series of cliffs, as I call them, where it starts out with very high participation rates in science fairs. So for instance, our first point of contact between young people and science is at our science fairs. We run a science fair called the Mini Scientist for primary schools, and we would see over 60% participation by young girls at that point. Then you go through to secondary school, and we've got two competitions that we work with, the BT Young Scientist, which I was glad to say all 4 major prizes this year were won by young girls, and SciFest, the other science fair that we are participating in, and that's about 60% participation of young girls. So there's no lack of talent coming through from primary and secondary school levels. Then you go on into college level degrees, and the statistic we heard today here was that about 27% of young girls go on to take STEM related college courses. And then after that, for some reason, there's this massive cliff that even though, while 27% participation in college courses is not good enough just yet, but the drop off between college courses and actually working at industry, where the participation rates drop to something like between 8 to 10% of women working in STEM-related careers. It's just this incredible gulf we have to cross. There's at least 27% of women who are qualified to work in industry, and yet only 8 to 10% of them take up careers in engineering or technology type roles. So that's the area that we really have to focus on in the coming years in Ireland, to fill that skills gap and the careers gap, and also allow young women to participate in the careers of the future.
And how do you see Intel playing a role in addressing that terrible drop-off where you've got such a small number of these women who have the skills and talent but aren't going into industry?
Yes, so from an Intel perspective, we've always felt that technology and engineering is very much the lifeblood of Intel. You know, we make perhaps the most complex products in the world out at our facility in Leixlip. So for us, it's part of what we do. We've always had a real passion for education at Intel and a passion for technology. So when we look at what's possible in the world of technology, and the fact that young women aren't making the career and the college course decisions that will allow them to avail of those opportunities in the future, we feel that's a real problem, both for Ireland and for the world. One of the great challenges, I suppose, that we face as a society or as a world are the so-called grand societal challenges that you hear the Commission talking about, in particular our Commissioner Morgan Quinn. Things like climate change, demographic change, food security, massive challenges that will only be solved through science. And if we don't have young girls participating in science courses and then going on into either research or industrial careers in science, we don't get to have the full range of talent at our disposal to solve those problems. So if we look at what we can do at Intel to help change that, well, the first thing we can do is, I suppose, participate in campaigns like the Women Invent Tomorrow campaign, which raise awareness. So raising awareness is the first thing that we can do. The second thing is to create more I suppose, awareness through role models. So highlighting women that are doing well in industry, highlighting women that have done well in academic careers and industrial careers in the STEM and the science areas. And then thirdly, I suppose, role modeling, mentoring. So mentorship is an incredibly important part of this as well, because at various different points through a young girl's academic career and on into, which is making those early transition steps into industry, she'll need advice along the way, she'll need encouragement, and that best comes from somebody who has already walked a mile in their shoes, maybe a woman who's already made the transition from academia to industry, can talk to them about the challenges, can talk to them about the solutions they found. And we find that mentorship is an incredibly important part of this process. So the three things that I suppose that we can work on at Intel are awareness, role models and highlighting what's possible, and then mentorship to help young girls make the transition from academia to industry.
If you're targeting girls, say, at transition year phase, you're kind of getting them at source. But at that phase, they're kind of making decisions where the way our school system works, you'll probably choose things like art or history or science, and you have to make that decision. Do you think that's an inherent problem in the educational system?
It is, and I think there's a great quote from Eric Schmidt talking about blurring the lines between art and science, which I think is a very modern and very smart way of looking at these so-called T-junctions that our education system tries to create, that art is somehow creative and warm and cuddly, and science is somehow linear and cold and not at all something that a creative person would go into, which really couldn't be further from the truth. If you consider the kind of careers of the future, where you're going to need people who can think creatively, almost look around corners, but also have the basis in education and fact to allow them to base those instincts almost on through educational foundations. What you need is this mix of art and science. And our education system is just not set up that way. It's set up to stream people at a very early age, and as I say, at these T-junctions, where you have to choose either art or science at maybe as young as 12 or 13. I heard Regina Moore talking about it at the recent Future Jobs Forum. So if you're making decisions at 12 or 13 years of age between either an art-based subject or maybe history or geography or a science subject or taking honours maths to a higher level, they're the wrong kind of decisions that we have to make too early an age.